The movie begins in the Needles, a natural park in South Dakota, where we find veteran truck driver Mike McCann. Not content with just driving dangerous roads, he completely unhooks his harness and continues climbing recklessly, managing to reach the top. In the next scene, we see him talking about this adventure with his therapist, who recommends he read about survivor's guilt. For a long time, Mike has felt guilty about the death of his brother Gertie, who passed away during a job that got more complicated than expected. His climb symbolizes his unresolved grief. Following his therapist's advice, the protagonist agrees to accept his late brother's belongings and finds his will. "That's where we're going," Mike says. North of Kathmandu, we meet the small village of Kodari, where a businessman named Yash introduces himself, claiming that hydroelectric power is the future of the region. He intends to build a dam in Kodari, promising the locals they'll be relocated to a good area. However, they call him a liar and believe they'll be sent to slums where they'll suffer from labor exploitation. Instead, the villagers prefer to listen to Mr. Ray, a descendant of the founding Ray family. He explains that his father is the one who speaks for the family, but he hasn't arrived yet. We then see the elderly man heading to the village on a narrow road. On one side is a massive mountain, and on the other, a colossal cliff. Just before arriving, the bus encounters a truck in the middle of the road. When the angry driver gets out, the truck slowly begins to reverse. In the village, Mr. Ray admits that Yash has made him a very generous offer to build his company, but that would mean giving up the river that has helped this village so much. Allowing the river's destruction would be like denying their own roots. Back on the road, the bus prepares to continue when the truck reappears out of nowhere and starts pushing it toward the cliff. In the middle of his speech, Mr. Ray is interrupted by his son BJ, who reveals that his grandfather has died in an accident. At least that's what the police said, but father and son know it was Yash's doing and that they're next. During his trip back to Nepal, Mike dreams of his brother Gertie. Before leaving for his last military service, Gertie promised that when he returned, they would climb Everest together. In the city of Kathmandu, the protagonist meets Danny, a former soldier turned tourist guide who has climbed Everest countless times. The veteran asks her if there is any hope, to which she laughingly replies that with a few oxygen tanks, he will achieve his goal. Seeing a group of soldiers training, Mike remembers the accident Gertie suffered on the front lines. Although he survived, his brother was left with aphasia, a language disorder that made communication difficult. Danny brings Mike back to reality by telling him it's time to board the bus to Everest. The protagonist isn't the only American, as we also meet Professor Evan and his daughter Star, who is a typical young girl who doesn't care about anything. Danny has a run-in with her, although her father apologizes for her attitude and mentions that she hasn't been the same since Star stops him there. During the trip, the protagonist becomes friends with Spike, the bus driver, and an old truck driver just like him. Spike stops at a street market to pick up a young man we know as VJ. On his way to his father's cabin, a pair of mercenaries named Jit and Shankar start following him, so he gets on the bus to try and lose them. Unfortunately for him, the hitmen catch up to the bus and take the passengers hostage. At gunpoint, they force Spike to drive on an alternate route. Danny deduces that the kidnappers intend to meet their client, which means they'll soon silence the passengers. Faced with this threat, Mike and Danny find a way to sabotage a bus tire. When the vehicle starts to wobble, the duo lunges at the mercenaries while Spike tries to regain control. Hugo falls after being stabbed by Mike before being thrown onto the road. Then, the man helps Danny with Jay, although she is so skilled that she can handle both of them. In the midst of the chaos, Star notices that there's a gun on the ground and passes it to Danny, who knocks Jit out with a single blow. What a way to finish! Upon the arrival of the police, the passengers hand over both Jit and the still unconscious BJ. While they wait for a new bus, Professor Evan asks Danny for help in talking to the police to find out the name of the boy they picked up. As soon as he hears that he belongs to the Ray family, The man deduces that they are in Kodari. This explains the absence of villagers who are leaving due to the hydroelectric dam project. All the prominent families have bowed down, except for one, the Rays. Just then, the bus arrives to pick up the passengers from the accident. However, Evan insists on talking to BJ, although Captain Shankar informs him that he is still unconscious. With many doubts, the professor points out that they were very lucky to run into officers in such a deserted area. A great coincidence, right? Meanwhile, in a nearby rug workshop, Yash tortures poor Vijay, who in pain swears that neither he nor his father will give up their lands. Outside, Evan expresses his suspicions to Mike and Spike, who were repairing the bus. Danny adds that Yash is not the businessman he pretends to be, but a mobster from Kathmandu who has the authorities in his pocket. At the professor's insistence, the group decides to stay in Kodari while the other tourists leave on the other bus. Mike, Danny, and Evan break into the workshop, pulling guns on Shankar and asking him about his real boss. Yash appears on his own, welcoming the tourists. Evan takes the opportunity to reveal that he represents the U.S. Department of State and that Yash and his group will be in serious trouble if they don't release BJ. The Yankees are definitely losing their ability to intimidate, Yash says. Mike and Danny quickly take cover behind a table, facing off against Yash's men in a shootout. With that, Danny leaves with BJ and yells at Spike to start the bus. Luckily, he had already repaired it. Star asks about her father, but Danny refuses to answer and orders her to get on the bus. When hit by a bullet, Mike flees and returns to the others. It is then that he and Danny confess to Star that her father has died. Shankar and his cronies get in the way, shooting at Spike. Mike has no choice but to take the wheel, showing off his truck driving skills. Once out of danger, Vijay tells them that his father is near the Chinese border. The road they took, known as the Sky Road, is very narrow and can only be traveled by mule. However, Mike is sure they can make it with the bus. But Spike, unfortunately, will not be a part of that journey. In his agony, the old man demands that they leave him in the open with a rifle. If he goes, he'll go out fighting. After saying goodbye to Spike, the group reaches a steep descent where they hook the bus to a construction crane. Halfway down, the crane's engine breaks down, so they have no choice but to cut the cable. The bad news is they're now without transportation. The good news is that Mike saved it from a worse fate, death. Seeing a junkyard of cars, the protagonist finds just the part he needs to revive the bus. Meanwhile, Yash's convoy continues their search when a dying Spike tries to shoot at them. Shankar finishes him off. After a joint effort, Mike and the others manage to lift the bus. While he and Danny go down to the junkyard, Yash's group arrives at the ravine. Due to the construction crane's breakdown, they'll have to wait at least 2 hours to go down. During their work, BJ and Star take the opportunity to get to know each other, and she confesses that her parents recently got divorced. She became bitter with both of them, and now that she's lost her father, all that's left is regret. BJ reassures her that she will see her father again. With the missing part, the group manages to repair the bus more or less, but it will be enough to get to Mr. Ray's cabin. Speaking of him, he sent a message to his son asking him why he was late. What he doesn't know is that BJ's phone is in Yash's hands. Posing as his son, Yash asks him to remind him of the way. Since Mr. Ray took the bait, Yash sent a mercenary on a motorcycle to hunt him down. The mercenary quickly arrives at the cabin, ready to surprise Mr. Ray. He who laughs last, laughs best. Upon arriving at the burning cabin, BJ points out that his father lives 2 kilometers further on. However, Mr. Ray was already waiting for him there. With his son back in his arms, the man exclaims that he knew it wasn't him on the phone. Having said that, Mr. Ray introduces himself to his son's new companions, at which point Mike faints due to his bullet wound. He had endured a lot until now. Everyone carries him to Mr. Ray's cabin, where Danny takes care of his wounds with Star's help. In the middle of it, they hear a motorcycle approaching. Danny turns off the cabin lights while BJ and his father hide the bus. Star, who had gone out to get water, tries to return to the cabin silently but is intercepted by a hitman. Although she survives, Star is very distressed, so Danny offers to teach her self-defense. At dawn, when Mike opens his eyes, the group continues their journey toward the Chinese border, although a cliff complicates things for them. Without a bridge, VJ suggests that they could use the crane that was intended precisely to build the bridge. As soon as the bus is anchored, Mr. Ray sees the mercenaries approaching. Therefore, he decides to stay on this side to cover his companion's retreat. Not without saying goodbye to his son, Danny tries to support him from the bus, but she is hit by a bullet. Jit stops the crane, leaving the bus hanging over the void. Now VJ and the others are next, although Mike defends them with nothing more than a pistol. Once he gets close enough, the man lunges at Jit and reactivates the crane. After an intense struggle with Jit, the protagonist jumps back onto the crane's platform, at which point Danny surprises the mercenaries with a grenade launcher. Finally, the group can continue on their way to Yasha's frustration. Although the victory comes at a cost, BJ cries inconsolably for his father's death, and it is then that Star decides to comfort him. 50 kilometers from the Chinese border, Jit and Shankar appear behind them. In an attempt to take them down with an RPG, Jit causes a landslide in the road tunnel. Although Mike manages to get through, a motorized mercenary leaves them with an explosive surprise. Danny falls unconscious from the blow, and just at that moment, Jit attacks again after having gone around the mountain. When she lunges at the bus, Mike leaves BJ at the wheel and confronts the mercenary. In the middle of the chaos, Shankar also lunges at the bus, confronting Mike. When Jit tries to strangle Danny with a seatbelt, Star attacks with a move Danny taught her, who quickly manages to defeat the mercenary. Mike, for his part, uses the urn of ashes to hit Shankar, throwing him over a cliff. Free from threats, BJ points out that they are on the verge of reaching China. However, Mike reminds them that they have one last pending matter, Yash. With the mobster on the edge of the void, the protagonist asks for a vote on whether they should kill him or not. Everyone votes yes. Now they're really finished. Once at the Chinese border, they are greeted by a soldier who is surprised to see the piece of junk they arrived in. Back in Kodari, BJ, now the highest representative of his family, announces the construction of a smaller dam that will not affect the village's limits or the river. The residents celebrate this decision, as do their new friends. After Star's departure, Mike and Danny resume their initial goal to climb Mount Everest. Or at least they try, because the veteran can only get so far. It is there that he scatters the ashes of his brother Gertie, ending this chapter, just as he has to say goodbye to the best tourist guide of all, Danny. However, as soon as he steps on the airport, he notices a rope that reminds him of his climbing days with his brother. He's not going to give up on it,